of His Majesty the King.
Okay, let him answer that.
Yes.
Well, I didn't know about the opposition boycotting the election on the basis of religion. That's the first time I ever heard it. But the fact is that the king have promised people to restore and to activate the constitution and the parliament that we have in the 70s. But the king did not keep his promise. There was a reason for the opposition to boycott, because the king, and it's not the first time, he promised of reforms, and when things cool down, the man, he goes back on all his promises. This was the actual problem.
Okay, I'm going to take a question from the lady in red. Lady in red.
Hi, I'm from Bahrain, and I was one of the youth activists who took part in the protest since February the 14th. We partly did so because we no longer want to be treated as subjects. We want to be treated as equal citizens with full citizenship rights and a full constitutional system. In doing that, my husband was arrested in April. He's been in jail for 8 months, just to silence activists like me. So I
Can we come to a question, please?
My question to Abdulla Alderazi, you know there are 700 people in prison today, political prisoners in prison today. They're the ones that this report talks about. They were subjected to systematic torture. There has been no initiative to release them. The king has not promised to release them. My husband calls me and asks me, why am I still in jail and my torturer gets promoted? Do you think I trust a government that spends millions on PR to appear to be good to the West, instead of actually being good and actually promising reforms? There isn't even a promise of reform.
Okay,
There's no promise of political reconciliation.
Let's allow Abdulla Alderazi to answer that.
Of course, holding people in prison and torture, nobody accepts that at all. That's the principle. The report has pointed out...
How can you trust a government that does that?
Can I finish my answer, please?
Please, let him speak.
Can I finish my answer?
Let him speak.
Nobody, a human being, will accept any mistreatment for what happened for those prisoners. Now, do we want to go forward for a better future for all Bahrainis? Or are we going to, to just talk and talk and talk? We have to take actions. If we want to take actions, we have to look at experiences in the world. South Africa, for example. South Africa has applied
let's just stay with Bahrain, shall we? Let's just stay
Morocco,
with Bahrain.
Chile, Argentina, all other places.
Spring.
Now,
let me
finish. Okay, let me finish. So for example, I am with dropping all the charges. The government should really drop all the charges, should release all prisoners without discrimination, should reinstate everybody who lost their jobs. Not just reinstated, to go back to their original job.
Do any of the things that you've said convince you?
No, of course not, because there are more promises, there are more should. Where's the action? Why doesn't he open the jails? We're living off a stroke of a pen of the king. We have to decide whether he wakes up and decides to release everyone in prison, or he goes to bed deciding, well, not today, maybe tomorrow. I don't want to live off a pen, off the whim of a king that just decides to jail people, to torture people. And then what does he do? He promises more commissions to look into this, which you're participating in, instead of actually doing the action.
Okay, all right.
There is no excuse for not doing any of this stuff.
Do you want the country to go forward or backward?
No, she wants people released from jail.
That's what I want. I want to myself.
So why isn't it happening? You have faith in the king.
I'm sure it will happen. I'm sure it will happen soon.
When?
That's the promise. Because of the committee, now National Committee, it has been working on that. We started with a recommendation related to the restated of the people back to their work, and this will be done within 10 days.
So you're promising me my husband will be out of jail in a week?
I'm not.
He's been sentenced to 3 years in a military court.
I said that there is serious reforms coming. There are serious people. There are serious people who are in the government who wants to change, who wants to go forward for the country, to have a better Bahrain of before 14 February.
Okay, all right.
And this we need support from all of us.
We've heard that point. I'm going to take a question from the gentleman at the back over there. Yes, you. Yeah.
Hi, I'm a South African journalist based in Qatar. And we've heard reports allegations that even if Bahrain wanted to reform, Saudi Arabia would not allow it to happen. Any response?
Khaled Almaeena, straight to your door.
Well, tomorrow if the lights go out in London, they will blame Saudi Arabia. But in that, I think this overhype of the Saudis interfering, I think by saying that you demean the government of Bahrain and the King of Bahrain and others. I mean, Bahrain is not a puppet. It has been in the forefront. It is a very active country. I doubt that, because the Saudis themselves are reforming. If you see the last 5, 6 years, the Saudi Arabia I knew 10 years ago is totally changed with women coming in and all. I'm not saying that it's going with the speed that I would like to for it to go, or with other young people.
What's changed in Saudi Arabia?
Well, in the sense that there has been a great focus on the women's issues. The women now are going to go into parliament in the next session.
They still can't drive.
Another good question, and
Not that I want to go on about driving.
No, but this is, again, a campaign that should be decided by the women. And there are people who would really like to go ahead. Some of them have been detained for a few days because they drove. But I think a lot of these root causes can be really, the solution lies with the people themselves. But I do believe that there has been some change.
Nabeel Rajab, you want to come in here?
I think one of the most dangerous things in the Arab Spring or Arab Revolution are the Saudis now. They're revolting back and they're fighting all the revolution, all the movement, all the democratic movement. I think you, as a youth movement around the Arab Spring, you have to be aware of that. They are either fighting the revolution or hijacking the revolution, as I could see indication right now in Egypt.
Well, even the Saudis believe there can be no stability if the majority is dissatisfied. So if these actions sort of dissatisfy people in the Gulf, then it's bad for Saudi Arabia too. I am saying it, with all the solemnity at my disposal. I mean, I don't think so. The Saudi role is always over-magnified about the interference. We have our own issues. We have 3 or 4 major issues: youth, the environment, population, women's issues. I doubt that there are people sitting and plotting and taking a pen and saying, today we do this in Bahrain, tomorrow we go to the UAE.
The report didn't find any evidence of Saudi involvement in the abuses, did it?
I mean, the fact that people fighting for democracy and social justice, and you go and invite other army to come in, whether they were involved directly or indirectly, it's a shame that you send your troops to fight a peaceful protest. People have no arm, people have even no knife. That itself, it's something that it's going to be in the history, black spot in the history of the GCC forces headed by the Saudis.
But Nabeel, it was not the Saudis who invited, it was the whole GCC union.
The Saudis and the Emiratis.
Well, I mean, now you added one more, you can add a third one. Yes, but it was not the Saudis. As I said, believe you me, and I know that there are no people plotting and saying today we do this in Bahrain or tomorrow we do that.
How do you know?
So the GCC forces made not to go interfere in the internal politics of any country, but to defend the external threat. And there was no single external threat in Bahrain. And now Mr. Bassiouni said that there was no threat from Iran, as they try to present it. And as we've been victims of saying Iran, Bahrain, Iran, Shias, Iran, Bahrain, they've been playing with this card for many, many years. And we are paying the price. So there was no external threat. There was no reason for the Saudi to come to Bahrain and to take part in the crackdown and killing the people.
But let me put it this way. The other GCC countries would have flatly refused. As they have, the UAE has not joined the economic union. The Omanis don't want a unified currency. So they could have said, look, Mr. Saudis, we don't want to go in with you. You go ahead. They could have said that.
Okay, Christopher Davidson.
Well, I think with regards to the Saudi angle, Saudi Arabia is fast becoming the major counter-revolutionary force in the region. It's still a country with subsidies and some regional clout. I think Bahrain and elsewhere in the Gulf, where there have been protests and riots, Oman, for example, where there's been a Saudi aid rescue package, represent a real existential threat to Gulf monarchy. Saudi Arabia, United Arab Emirates to some extent, want to portray the Arab Spring as something connected to Arab Republic authoritarianism and something that for some reason cannot take root in a traditional monarchy. Bahrain, of course, is a traditional monarchy where the ruling family look and speak the same as the other Gulf monarchs, but of course it's now a resource-rich one. So a collapse of monarchy in Bahrain, I would argue, would seemingly break the spell or the illusion of invincibility of Gulf monarchy in the region.
Okay, gentleman in the front row, we'll take a question from you, please.
Hello, I'm from Qatar, and my question for Mr. Abdullah. So first, you exhibited your disagreement with the violation and the abuse of the protesters. And then you went on about how the government made promises and to reform. And my question is, don't you think that before the government makes these promises, don't you think that they should start by stopping these violations?
Okay. Of course, they should. I agree with you that...
Did they?
Pardon, let me finish. I want to finish that. Of course they do. Unfortunately, it's still going on. And that is what exactly we mean that the report, it's